Alright guys, it's Kremp here, and I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Officially 1 week away from the World Championship, Dashy gives his perspective on what Black Ops 6 has been like as a title as it rounds to a near conclusion, and what Black Ops 7 could potentially look like going forwards. Dashy makes it pretty clear, no more CODs in the present or in the past, only in the future. Gives way more optimism around the future potentially of these games, but Dashy does warn, look, don't get your hopes up for the new Call of Duties, but at the end of the day, how come Black Ops 6 with all of this theoretical development time still came up with maps such as Red Guard Hardpoint, a Red Guard Search and Destroy? Dashy not especially happy with those map mode combinations, and what that potentially means for Black Ops 7 and the dev time that might have been put in there is pretty exciting to the OpTic team in general. Very much true to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always. Thought this is pretty cool, honestly, looking back at the Black Ops 2 campaign. Of course, today's June the 19th, that's the date where this scene was talked about being unfolding, which is, yeah, I don't know, it was just a big moment yesterday on Twitter. I mean, this got like 2.5 million views on Twitter. People were talking a lot about the fact that BO2 set in 2025 is unfolding in real life right about now. Now, 1 week until champs. It is officially 1 week until champs as of today. Pretty funny, right, that a league, they tweeted this out, then they tweeted it out again, and they thought, you know what, we probably should make it clear when the matches actually start. So yeah, that's what the league tweeted out yesterday. It was also 2 years ago yesterday that New York won the 2023 COD champs. Now that season, there was talk, and you know, from myself and many others, and for understandable reasons, about the state of the season schedule as well, right? Like, it wasn't ideal that year either to think that in 2023 there was no World Cup, right? So, you know, the World Championship was over and that was it then for several months. This year at least the World Cup I guess exists, so the season stays on a little longer, but it's still not been an ideal last few weeks, to say the very least. But anyway, 2 years ago yesterday it was New York's turn to win the World Championship. There was a bit of talk about it in the replies, because obviously Priestess, Skyz, HyDra and Kismet, probably the best individual year from a player that we've seen in a rather long time was HyDra on this game. Like, the guy was out of control, and certainly Major 4 in the World Championship was ridiculous. And let's not forget, on Major 5 in the World Championship, as it was that season, ridiculous. They did play several tournaments that year, and they won 3 of them, right? So it was an interesting comment, right? The guy, see a reflex in the reply, says, weakest CDL champions ever. Interesting question. Look, they won 5-0 in the finals. They slammed Scrappy's Toronto in the finals. Kismet, obviously the Bulldog and all this, that trophy's mine, or whatever he said, and then slammed them in the finals. Yeah, were they inconsistent? They won the first event, then they went on a pretty terrible run, and then they bounced back and won the final 2 events in a row. But I don't think they were, you know, the weakest championship team, because they actually, you know, didn't dominate the year, but, you know, they flanked the year quite nicely with the wins at the start and towards the end. So, you know, who are the weakest CDL champions? I guess that's then the question, because it can't be FaZe from Cold War. They were dominant throughout the entire year and they won it. Dallas Empire from Modern Warfare 19 beat FaZe in the finals. Very strong through the majority of the season, certainly towards the end of it, so I don't really think it can be them. 2022 it was Thieves. You know, they were the strongest by a margin at the end of the game. Like, there was, I mean, apart from Boston, who nearly beat them Game 5 round 11 at the first round, like, apart from that, there was just no way that Thieves are losing that tournament. Like, Thieves was so good at the end of Vanguard, they could have played that tournament 100 times. They probably win like 80 times. Like, maybe that's an exaggeration, but they were the best. And I if you ask Octane that question, I'd be intrigued to hear what he had to say. 2023, of course, was the New York team, and then last year was OpTic Texas, who were also very strong. They'd won the event before. Like, OpTic's ceiling last year was the highest of any team, and that's what they showed at, you know, when they played in Toronto and they won. And then, of course, they played at Champs. I don't even think at Champs they played quite as well, maybe, but they just, you know, the rivals maybe fell off a little bit. So, you know, who are the weakest CDL champions ever? It is an interesting question. In the history of COD, people look back to 2018, right? They look at the World War II Evil Geniuses roster and say, look, yeah, they were great and it was a great run, and any team that wins the World Championship deserves it and is massively commendable. But equally, you look at that team of Aches, Apathy, Silly and Assault, and you say, okay, you know, were those the weakest CDL team? If you played the tournament 100 times, how many times did that result happen? Probably not as many as some other tournaments and other champions that we've had. On that type of topic, thought this is kind of interesting. Blue pill or red pill? The choice is yours. So the red pill, of course, the newer generation players, Simp, Shotzzy, HyDra, aBeZy. And then the OG, kind of blue pill, John, Scump, Zoomer, and Apathy. Now, this is actually kind of an interesting one. Maybe it depends a little bit on the type of game and where you want to look, I suppose. I don't know. The way that I look at it, as good as these guys were in the blue pill, it is hard to look by, you know, the talent that we have nowadays. And, you know, to take Simp and aBeZy, who are near enough top 10 players ever, Shotzzy, who's definitely there in terms of talent, and then HyDra, who's, you know, undoubtedly one of the most talented, like, possibly the most talented player, like, the most gifted COD player that we've seen touch the sticks probably since Scump. You know, it's interesting, right? Like, aBeZy and John and Zuma, I all rate very, very highly. But in terms of blue pill versus red pill, I think you kind of have to take the red pill. I don't know. What do you guys think about it? Even if you're just looking at, like, who sits where on the all-time list, and even if you think that's relevant or not, right? But, you know, John and aBeZy are in the ballpark maybe of top 15 players ever. Zuma's probably a little bit further down. Scump, of course, is right at the top. But then, you know, if you consider this, you'll probably, you know, people will take aBeZy over John, for example, and stuff like that. Whether that's fair or not, I don't know. I think it's an interesting question. Speaking of Zuma, though, I thought this is pretty cool to share. This was a clip that actually came up when Attach officially announced his retirement, but Attach was talking about how during the World War II season, famously his FaZe team, they beat OpTic, of course, in the grand finals. It was Attach, Zuma, of course, Crowder, as he became at Replays, he was known as at the time, and then Priester, right, to round out the team. They won that, I mean, remarkable match against the OpTic dynasty in the finals. There, Attach ran through the artillery, all that type of stuff. They won the playoffs. Had they lost the playoffs, Team Caliber were equally struggling after a strong start. They were planning to merge the rosters, and the teams would have been Accuracy on the main AR, Attach, Zuma, and then Kenny as a team of 4. And that team would have been, like, so good at that game. Like, given how good the players were, it's so difficult to imagine that that team wouldn't have been the best or very close to the best. So remarkable how it works out in hindsight, because, of course, that year is the one that Zuma looks back on probably the closest and says, damn, that could have been the World Championship win, right? World War II FaZe eventually came top 3 that tournament. But had they formed this roster with Kenny and Accuracy, who knows what could have happened, right? So, yeah, remarkable story, I thought. And, you know, it's interesting because you put together some teams in different games and you think, damn, that team wouldn't really hit. But in certain games, certain teams would be different gravy. That's probably one of them. But let's talk about what Dashy had to say about BO7 and some of the other OpTic guys as well. This is the Black Ops 6 World Championship coming up in a week's time. It's been an interesting year, mainly carried by OpTic having some serious drama. The quality of the game itself hasn't been spectacular. The game itself, fundamentally, I think is pretty sound. The players would definitely agree on that from the questions that I've asked. But in terms of the maps, that's been the big debate. Why aren't the maps any good? Why can't Track design good maps anymore? Why haven't we brought any good maps back apart from Hacienda? We could have brought so many other maps back, as Hacienda slotted right back into the map pool, no issues at all, but it's clearly not been the case at all elsewhere. The players are looking at Black Ops 7 and saying, damn, this game looks like it took a long time to prepare, and it's been, let's say, exacerbating the rumours that actually, yeah, maybe BO6 was a bit of an afterthought, and BO7 was the real title that Trek have been putting their time into for some time. Dashy is obviously optimistic that might be the case, but equally says, look, don't get your hopes up around Call of Duty, but nonetheless says the maps right now aren't where they need to be. Next year's game maybe is going to hit different.
I just got such BO3 vibes from those two. You think that's going to be an operator?
All I know is the game is going to be futuristic, so I'm excited.
Yeah, bro, no more of these fucking CODs in the past, bro. Like, I don't want to see Cold War.
You know Black Ops 6 is in the past too, right?
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Trust me. Like, I know Cold War BOs. I don't want none of these old guns, bro. Like, that you're limited. You have to do some of these shitty maps that they had in history. Just go in the future, bro. You have so much more options. The guns look cooler.
You can just do whatever you want.
Yeah, like the world's like, bro, the creativity at that point. You just go.
Limitations instead of redefining them. The guild is safe.
But rule number 1: never get your hopes up with COD. This could be the worst one ever. So.
We are pioneering the future
looks good.
of protection worldwide.
All right.
Our advancements are designed.
There's no way they don't have like wall running, right? Jetpacks and all that shit. Maybe not jetpacks.
I mean, they got camo.
Wait, I asked my chat, but like, do you guys understand like when he touches this shit and like he goes into a different dimension and shit like that, like what it means or not? Like, not true.
Discovered this.
I mean, this guy's basically wall running, bro. He's upside down. All right, yo, they're about to show some guy get sniped by a fucking big ass like sword, bro.
Bro,
you think that's a kill streak, bro? I just fucking throw a sword at you.
Wait, let me see.
Look at this shit.
Bro, you know what's crazy is like, there's no way they made this game in 10 months, bro.
Yo, I'm calling in that streak.
Jesus, dog.
Bro, this game had to have been in development for at least a couple of years, no bullshit.
It's gotta be good.
But like what I'm trying to say is like, I think BO6 was the game that literally got no attention.
Yeah, nah.
But I thought BO6 was being made for 4 years. Were they cooking BO7 for?
They said that they focused on BO7 more instead of BO6 or some shit like that. That makes sense.
It makes sense, but at the same time, it's like it doesn't make sense.
So basically, they released a game and just like said it is what it is. We're working on BO7.
I wish we knew that though, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, I swear to God, if I know that, like,
I would have been like, wow. I'm expecting to play Red Card and not be disappointed because I'm not expecting to play Red Card after 4 years when it's been in development and think, wow, like this is a great game.
If we knew that, we're thinking bigger picture.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking bigger picture. I wouldn't even complain about this shit. I swear to God, bro.
Bigger picture. Like,
I'm like, bet. All right, this year's gonna be pretty mid, and then fucking.
Not gonna lie though, this game is really good. It's just the maps.
Yeah, no, it's literally just maps.
What do you think on Dashy's perspective that the future is the way to stay for future Call of Duty games? Now, players that, of course, like the jetpack games will probably agree with this because it makes it more likely there's going to have to be some sort of advanced movement. At the end of the day, BO7 is set in 2035, right? So it's 10 years after BO2 and about 30 years before BO3. So, you know, it's not going to have the dramatic jetpack, wall bouncing, wall running that we had in BO3 in the jetpack era. But it is still going to have something. And I think that's definitely one of the talking points, that if you put a game into the future, certainly if it's a Treyarch game in the Black Ops series in the future, it just fundamentally has to have some additional movement components because otherwise it would not be consistent with the timeline. So that's one thing. There was talk for some time about Black Ops Gulf War, Black Ops Korean War, right? And all these other things after they did the Cold War one. And, maybe thankfully that didn't happen in the end, but Black Ops 6 isn't really far away. It's pretty present-based, and there's lots of feeling from the players that, okay, this game, in the future, it allows you more options. You can do more interesting things. Maybe you can make the game a bit more like arcade shooter, as it were. And I think that could be a positive for many. And maybe for the Modern Warfare series, that's how it needs to go as well. I don't think they're ever going to go crazy future, but it might be something that's worth keeping in mind that... we probably are in the era again where moving games back to the future makes some sense. It's, things always go in swings and roundabouts, don't they, right? When the jetpack era was happening, people were like begging to go back to boots on the ground, give us a World War game, give us like a Cold War game, whatever. And, they came up with World War II, then Black Ops 4 happened, then we went back to the gritty with Modern Warfare 19, and we've kind of been there ever since. Vanguard was a very good example of that. I don't think a game like Vanguard would... It's not like it hit great at the time. People weren't buzzing about Vanguard when it dropped. But equally, if you dropped Vanguard today, it'd be like, damn, like, come on, like, we've moved past this, right? So people are more back now to liking stuff like Titanfall, right, and that kind of game. So this is the interesting thing about what Activision have to do, is they have to kind of make these decisions a couple of years in advance to say, okay, we're going to build this type of game, and we're going to hope that the consumer sentiment at the time is in line with that. And, well, certainly the pro player sentiment is in line with, it seems, what they're trying to build. Is it going to be great? That's, of course, the question, because as Dashy understandably says, look, don't get your hopes up around Call of Duty. It's always a recipe for disaster, but then proceed, obviously, over the next couple of minutes to get their hopes up for Call of Duty, and I don't necessarily blame them for that. So very much interested in your thoughts in the comments. There was this tweet that came out yesterday here from T. Martin. Now that we're all grown up, can we admit Ghost was a great Call of Duty? Like, I wouldn't call it great, but the Search and Destroy was phenomenal, right? Like, this is Stonehaven from Ghosts, which is, yeah, certainly one of the maps of all time. And like, it was an exciting, like, in hindsight, obviously everything with the rose tinted glasses feels a bit better, but the Search and Destroy, like, I will never move away from the opinion that was just phenomenal. But I will say that in the replies, Doug says this was not a great Call of Duty, despite the fact that Doug was actually pretty alright at that game. But very much interested in your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.